Glad to have my friend John Hayward, National Security Deputy Editor at Breitbart. He's on X, and you should follow him there because he always writes brilliantly wherever you read him, either at Breitbart or on X, Dr_0. And the O in zero is the actual digit zero, Dr_0. Hey, John, good to have you back on this second anniversary of that terrorist attack that it seems a lot domestically now want to conveniently forget even happened. The whole predicate for the conflict we're in 2 years later was that heinous event, and we know that Hamas and a lot of their proxies and people that are affiliated have been waging an information war and a PR campaign to try to convince certainly the West, Americans, that Israel's the aggressor some 2 years after that heinous attack. So where do things stand today in your view?
Well, it's rather fraught. That information war you're talking about was waged with the help of the United Nations. The UN Special Rapporteur to the Palestinians came out today and gave a death figure for the number of children Israel has supposedly killed that's more than all the children that were alive in Gaza. And she said it with a straight face, just thinking nobody was going to double check or question whether that number was unrealistic. So the Hamas has had a lot of help from the international community. A lot of friends have been stepping in to help them. And look at how much worse our politics has gotten since October 7th. This was not just an event for Israel. A lot of the domestic violence we're seeing in America, political violence from the left, absolutely has its roots in October 7th and in the backlash to it. All those campus protests for Hamas, all those kids wearing keffiyehs and locking Jews out of their classrooms on college campuses, that was a huge wave of thuggish energy that is now completely infused the left. In a lot of ways, the American left is looking at Hamas and seeing a role model. Why can't we do what they did too?
There are, and again, I'm trying not to give a lot of oxygen to it. I mean, not that they need my help, but there are prominent people with prominent followings who are now building their shows and filling their followers full of the notion Israel's not only a bad faith actor, but now going as far as maybe even suggesting they were responsible for murdering Charlie Kirk. I mean, that's how bananas it's getting, and I mean, there are millions of people listening to that daily. What do we do with that culturally?
Well, you push back against it as best you can. You try to tell the truth. We don't have, speech laws that shut people up. And look at what's happening in England. You don't want them. You don't want the government Ministry of Truth throwing you in jail for saying the wrong thing online. So all you can do is push back by telling the truth as loudly as you possibly can. Those people you're talking about are making such a cynical effort to find an audience outside of their normal circles by throwing out some red meat they know the left will respond to and trying to usher in the campus protesters, the keffiyeh crowd, to their shows as well to build an audience. It's very cynical and it's monstrous, but that is part of the price you pay for having free speech. People can do things like that, and all you can do is speak back.
So in the money-making era of clicks and downloads, the strategy is bring in a lot of angry leftists on a thing that they think they can comfortably side with them on, not talking notably. And you'll notice, by the way, that these same shows that once fancy themselves as conservatives no longer talk about conservative agenda items whatsoever. They don't talk about spending. They don't talk about law enforcement. They don't talk about anything but Israel, almost round the clock. It's a cynical money play, a download click play, bringing in new ears and eyes from the left. Yeah, and there are people on the right, too, that have always thought Israel had too much influence over American politics. They worry that Israel will drag us into a war. So there's always been a bit of a strain on the right that they could appeal to as well. And these people are seeing a ripe opportunity, like a steak they can carve, to get a nice hunk of meat by looking at a place where those audiences intersect. And they can offer them something that will get the rage clickers of everybody along, on top of which it is a brutal war in Gaza. It's been a hard fight. Israel's taken a lot of casualties in fighting this war. It's urban combat. There's a lot of civilians in the way. That's how Hamas likes it. So it's very easy to say this is a terrible war. We'd all agree with that. I'm sure Netanyahu would agree with that. But then from there, they go in the direction of blaming the victims for the war, and that means they lose sight of what started it. And today, October 7th, is a great time to remember what started it. The core operating principle of terrorism is always to make the victim responsible for the violence. We had to do this to you. You left us no choice. It's all
all your fault. The war is all your fault. Every terrorist does that. Left-wing political terrorists in America are doing that today with Charlie Kirk. That's how all terrorism operates. It's the core principle of it. And today, October 7th, is a great day to remember what actually happened on that day and what Hamas actually did. And it is monstrous beyond description.
And radical Islam that motivates it, jihadists, Sharia law, if you want, all of it kind of part and parcel of the same mess. John, here's my overly simplistic brain, and you tell me, because you're smart and not overly simplistic. If you're asking me to choose, even if I really wasn't particularly fond of Israel, even if I really didn't like Benjamin Netanyahu or the government of Israel, if you're asking me to choose between radical Islamists governing and running roughshod over the region, or Israel and the nation of Israel, the government of Israel, holding firm and battling that back and annihilating it if possible, I choose the latter. I don't want radical Islam in any form or fashion, anywhere. Not in Nigeria, not in Dearborn, Michigan, not in Gaza. Is that overly simplistic?
No, that's exactly right. And that should have been the civilized world's joint response to October 7th. It's amazing and horrifying that Hamas has so much support at the UN, not just from Islamic states, but from other countries as well, when the world's unified response to October 7th should have been the people who did this need to surrender right now. And if they don't, everything that happens is on them. And they should have been shoulder to shoulder with Israel in prosecuting this war and exterminating barbarism. They didn't. They didn't do that. A lot of them sided with Hamas. And so now you're not talking about a civilized response to barbarism. You're talking about a negotiation. You have people that say we need to listen to Hamas's grievances, and maybe the answer is to give them a state, that disgusting spectacle at the United Nations. Let's just give them a state. That'll make everything okay. We'll give them some of their grievances, and maybe they won't murder any more music festivals if we're super nice to them. That is not the answer to barbarism. It can never be the answer to barbarism.
I'm going to hold you over if I could, because you've written plenty more about much more going on, and I want to get to that. But let me ask you about this. Now, 2 years in, the president's drafted a 20-point agreement to a ceasefire. Israel signed off on it. Hamas says they agree to tenets of it. I mean, how optimistic are you that Hamas would ever adhere to a ceasefire anyway? And how close are we to it, if at all?
The best thing this deal has going for it is that Trump got a lot of buy-in from Arab countries that support Hamas. Iran said they approve of the deal. So with that kind of pressure, it's a little different than it's ever been since October 7th, since the attacks. But I'm still not sanguine this is going to happen. Hamas always finds a way to throw in poison pills and sabotage every negotiation. And then their loyal followers in America run around and scream, peace, ceasefire now again, like it wasn't their fault. So I'm sure they'll try to find a way to scuttle this deal. But I think it has better chance of going through than anything else we've seen so far.
And do you think President Trump has to back off rhetoric like, if Hamas doesn't come to the table, Israel's free to do what it has to do? Do you think he's feeling political pressure to stop talking quite like that?
He probably is, but it is the right thing to say. That is the alternative, and everybody has to understand that. If they won't make this deal, if they won't take this last chance, then yes, they have to be annihilated, and everything that happens from that point forward is on them.
I couldn't agree more, and I'm not sure why that's hard. And again, anybody that thinks playing patty cake with Islamists, John, is going to end well for a non-Islamist is kidding themselves. I mean, you can feel whatever you want to feel, whatever bigotry you feel for Jews. Islamists will slit your throat, folks. Does everybody get that, John?
Yeah, I don't think they do, but they need to understand it. It's a virulent ideology. Not all Muslims hold to it, but when you have Islamism creeping into the discussion, you're putting violence, which they think is righteous violence, on the table, and they will not relinquish their right to commit that violence.
Yeah, and none of these people that are, supposed conservatives who rose to prominence with Turning Point or on Fox News, none of them are talking about slaughtered Christians in Nigeria. None of them are talking about Sharia law in places like Dearborn, Michigan, John. And we'll lose the culture if they don't.
About that. I know. I write articles about the Christians being slaughtered constantly. I'm the only one.
Which is why we turn to John Hayward, and we will continue this conversation on much more in just a moment. There is a new leader in Japan. President Trump congratulated her. Japan has just elected its first female prime minister, a highly respected person of great wisdom and strength. This is tremendous news for the incredible people of Japan. Congratulations to all, said President Trump on Truth Social. On X, the newly elected leader responded. Her name, I'll let John Hayward pronounce, since he's written extensively about her already. Good morning, John. Welcome back to you. Who is this, and why is she important to us?
Her name is Takeichi Sane, and she is probably going to be the new prime minister of Japan, the first female prime minister they've ever had. It's not a done deal. Some things could go wrong, but it's 90% likely that she'll be the prime minister. And she is known in Japan as their Iron Lady after Margaret Thatcher, because she idolizes Margaret Thatcher. She even dresses like her from time to time. So she's very conservative. She's very anti-illegal immigration. She wants immigration controls. She's in touch with populism in Japan and around the world. And that's the big story the media doesn't really like telling you. There is this rising tide of populism across the Western world, and a great deal of it is pushback against mass migration, illegal immigration, enforced cultural change. People in these countries are saying, this is our country, and we may welcome immigrants, but we're not yielding our national identity to them. And that is a big concern in Japan right now. There's a big controversy brewing there about plans to bring in huge numbers of African migrants to replace all the Japanese who aren't being born. They're in a demographic collapse. And people in Japan are nervous they're going to go the way of the United Kingdom if their leaders have anything to say about it. And Takeichi Sane ran against that and said, nope, not going to let that happen. I'll protect you. And she won. She's got a lot of popular backing.
What do you think? You just said something about the population collapse in Japan. We know that our birthing rates are low here in the United States. We know that's the case in the UK. What is that? I've stumbled into something I'm sure far bigger than we have time to discuss. But what's going on in civilized Western societies that populations are declining? Is it because we're all kind of relatively fat and happy and we'd rather just cash checks than make babies?
It's low birth rates, and I think, I don't see this bandied about a lot by the experts, but I think the reason is that the cost of motherhood, the opportunity cost of motherhood, has gone up so much. Not just the cost of raising the baby or going to the hospital, but what you have to give up as a young person to begin having children. As a young woman at a young age, you have to give up your career, your education, you have to make sacrifices. And in industrialized nations, the value of those sacrifices that are being made is so high that a lot of young people say, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to get my career done first. I'm going to be successful. I'll find the perfect man. We'll get married. And maybe in my 40s, I'll have a child. You can't sustain a population that way. And you don't have a chance of sustaining your population or your national integrity when you bring in populations that don't do that. And they do have children at a young age, and they have healthy demographic growth. And the biggest story in the world is that all of the world's advanced societies, including communist China, which basically tried ordering women to have more babies, and it didn't work. Every advanced society in the world is facing demographic collapse because they just don't have enough children. You have to start young, and you need a lot of people that have more than 2 children to keep a population healthy, and most Western societies are just not doing it.
I'm going to talk more with Steve Moore about this from an economics point of view, but I'm sorry, I'm going a place I didn't intend, but you're smart enough to pivot with me here. On AI and the projection from government officials that you could see millions of jobs in the next decade, millions, tens of millions of jobs replaced by artificial intelligence in the next decade. What does that do, and what does that do to the conversation you were just having with us?
Well, in one way, it dovetails with population collapse. If you're not having young workers and young people are not being born, you're going to have to turn to automation, machines. AI is a force multiplier that makes people much more productive when they use it. So you're going to have a smaller number of people getting a lot more done. And that may help you adjust to the downward curve of your population a little bit in productivity, at least at first. But it's really going to hurt you in the long run. Because one thing I can tell you for certain about AIs is that they don't pay taxes, and they never will. You can't replace your tax base of young workers with computers, machines, and intelligent software because you can't tax it. So you're never going to have the benefits you need to pay for your older generation. Every demographically collapsing country in the world is heading into a death spiral of social spending it can't afford, including China, again, which is very aware that it has this problem and is trying to stop it.
You mentioned China. I don't want to cram this, but we're going to have to for time's sake. You write about India doing business, restoring some flights with China, as well as continuing to buy Russian oil. What do we do with India? They're a real linchpin to this whole thing with both Russia and China, and they're playing ball with both of them, yes?
Exactly. That's exactly what they're doing. India is dancing a very precise dance between us and the Russia-Chinese axis. Russia, China, and Iran are building an axis of tyranny, of authoritarianism. And India is clearly signaling we might join that. We have options. We could. We get a lot of stuff from Russia. We don't want to mess up our relationship with them. We can even make nice with China, which has been our bitter rivals for many years now in pursuit of common interests. And then India turns to America and says, what will you give us to not do this? It's very shrewd on their part. They're negotiating very well from their perspective. And they also take the time to let Russia know we have alternatives. We could buy American oil. We don't have to buy yours. We can make do with less. So you'd better keep those discounts coming, Russia, and you'd better keep working to keep our friendship. They're in kind of a good place to be if you're trying to get everybody to bid for your friendship. But eventually they're going to have to decide which side they're on, because the line between the axis of authoritarianism and the free world is going to become much more stark in the next 20 years or so.
John Hayward is the fantastic, brilliant read. Every time he writes, you must pick up what he reads. If you don't, go to Breitbart and read. He is the National Security Deputy Editor there. He is Dr_0, with the O in zero being the digit. Always good to see you, John. Thank you, my friend.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.